Hey, true believers. Chris Mack coming at you today with DCeased Unkillables number 3. And I have to admit, I'm really thankful that my local comic shop put this variant in. This is kind of an homage to the Suicide Squad movie, and I think this looks so cool. I mean, yeah, there's a few, artistic things where it's like, oh, they could have tweaked that, but nonetheless, I think that looks awesome. Now, before we get into any of this, because this is the final issue of this run. So they did that thing where they decided to put the credits at the end, so I have to credit it this way, and I don't want to spoil anything, so it's called Friends and Family, written by Tom Taylor, penciled by Carl Mostert, inked by Trevor Scott, Neil Edwards, and Mostert, colored by Rex Locus, lettered by Sida Timfontaine. I'm sorry if I butchered that. And then here's everybody else that was responsible for the book. So yeah, this was a really great read, guys. I do feel like, however, that this could have been a long-running series, but because this is kind of a backup thing to the original DCeased, it kind of got chunked to 3 issues, which is kind of like, darn, because I could have seen this going so much longer. But anyway, let's go ahead and jump into it. Now, spoilers if you didn't read the last issue, or that, if you didn't see the last review, which if you haven't, pause this one, go check out issue 2, then come back. And with that said, last issue, Bane got bit by Mirror Master. Mirror Master got hit with this anti-life equation virus thingamajig. And so he is on the rampage. And at this point, villains and heroes are locked up in this orphanage in Bloodhaven, taking care of these orphans, training them for the apocalypse. And I like how it says, hell had come to the orphanage. And so everyone's scrambling to try to survive right now. And we get a quick but really cool battle between Bane and Grundy. And like I said, Bane was strong, inhumanely so. Bane no hurt children. And it says Grundy was a whole another thing. And he just straight up rips Bane's head off. You're like, oh my god, that is intense. Throws Bane's head and smashes it into another zombie's face. And the creeper's like, oh wow, that's the first headbutt I've ever seen without a body behind it. I just kind of had to make me laugh. That was sort of a funny little beat. Now, real quick, Grundy says to go because, the undead are trying to swarm him, and all these children that have been raised and trained by heroes and villains alike are saying, let our Uncle Grundy go. Now, Taylor goes through and gives the description of each child here and, what their skills are. Now, I kind of wish that instead of doing this, I wish you would have kind of done what Claremont used to do with the X-Men, where, as they were fighting, they would say Wolverine's claws, that come out from behind housings in his wrists, and you just kind of add to the momentum. This kind of feels like there's a stall that you have to read all of this. So, kind of a mild, quirk of mine. So, anyway, nonetheless, jump in and just lots and lots of action. And as I said before, Mostert's art reminds me a lot of Frank Quietly. So if a lot of people are like, I don't like the art, you have to really have a taste for it. So if you want to kind of see where the inspiration came, one of the best books to read would be Grant Morrison and Frank Quietly's New X-Men. That's where I kind of got introduced to his art style, and I loved it when Morrison and him returned on the first volume of Batman and Robin back pre-Flashpoint. Great artwork there. Now, there's a really cool dynamic between Gordon and Slade. They kind of referred to as the two dads at this point. And Gordon's saying we need to set up a kill box for these zombies. So a kill box is kind of where you get into a corridor and you kind of use bodies as a barrier as you're mowing them down. Intense, right? And Slade's like, put a corridor full of bodies is only an effective barrier for so long. Believe me, I speak from experience. And so, as Gordon's talking about doing all this, Slade's like, I like this side of you. So I really like the dynamic between these two. And they have to flee the orphanage. So there's a couple of buses, and then, of course, there's that badass Batmobile just busting out through the orphanage. And what they decide to do is hit this garden in Gotham. So I kind of think y'all know where that's sort of going. But because of the mirrors and whatnot, Mirror Master, and like Reflections too, I think is how it works, he's able to come through and he starts picking off the orphans. So this is a terrifying like way to see some of these people go. I mean, it's extreme, especially how Taylor writes it and then how the art team illustrates it, but that's something that you would not expect to see in a DC book. So they're kind of pushing the limit, and I like that. And then Cheetah finally gets rid of the Mirror Master because she wants to save this child because they've really had a rapport, hence why she's wearing the kitty ears. And I like how she goes, "Good kitty, good dog," because this is, I believe his name's Ace. And then Cheetah's like, "She only gets to call me that." So that was kind of sweet, but funny, and sort of like, all right then. Now on their way to the garden, I like the splash page that they create here. It's the artwork's beautiful, but it's terrifying because as you go down, you see the garden, and then you just see the what do you call it? The blockade of the undead that they have to go through, and you're just like, oh man, how are they going to do this? And while all that's going on, Rose, which is Deathstroke's daughter, yeah, an obstacle comes through, which we saw in the very first issue when she took out what was his name? Savage, Randall Savage. So just weird seeing Diana as the villain because she is a zombie at this point. And so a lot of things that begin to happen here, like you start to see villains that are sociopaths that don't really have connections, don't know love, but you start to see something with Slade, and the same with Lady Shiva. And she actually tells her, like, Cassandra's like, "I thought you said there's no risk in going back for one person because Cassandra is the daughter of Shiva." And Shiva actually says, "Don't make a big deal of it, except that I love you and shut up." And you can kind of see her saying that because, she's this cool, calculated ninja. And of course, Grundy gets into the mix, and it's a great battle. I don't want to ruin it. I want you guys to pick up this book and read it. And then there's a really, really great moment here where you just see Slade mowing through the undead, and you're just like, how is Slade Wilson gonna get through this? Well, definitely check it out. Now, there's a moment where you find out, like, it reveals who the hero here is. That actually kind of gets them out of the muck of this, and it feels a little bit like a Deus Ex Machina, but if you go back and carefully read the last two issues, it actually makes a lot more sense. So I don't want to give it away. It's someone on the bus, and as you're reading, you're like, wait, well, why didn't they reveal themselves earlier? And Taylor does a good job here of revealing why they didn't, and it's actually a really sweet moment of why, like, it feels selfless instead of selfish, you know what I mean? But yeah, and the artwork too, especially how they're revealed. Oh man, the panel, I want to show it to you so bad, but again, I don't want to ruin it. And we're taken into the garden. And as you guys could have guessed, it's Ivy, as well as you would call at this point the remainder of the Justice League Dark. So Doc Fate, right? And then Constantine and Zatanna, which is a very much welcomed addition. And I love how everyone's saying, welcome to the post-apocalyptic Eden. And John's just like, it's pretty if you can ignore all the dead people scraping at the walls, which makes sense. But yeah, at that point, guys, I don't want to ruin any of this book. So I just kind of wanted to give you the synopsis of what happens, showed you that the art's actually really beautiful, especially if you're like me and you're a Frank Quietly fan. I like that Carl Mozart here really kind of expounds on that, where you can kind of see where he's starting to find his own style. So very two cool art styles mixed together there. Now, if you guys have enjoyed this comic book, please make sure to first support your local comic shop and see if they have a copy. If not, then, there'd be alternate routes to go. But that's always first and foremost, to keep local shops open. Second, if you guys have enjoyed the review, we definitely appreciate it if you take a moment to hit like, share, and subscribe. Helps the club channel more than you could possibly know. And if you wouldn't mind hitting that fancy little DCeased bell next to subscribe, that way as we continue to upload content, you guys will get notified. You can come to the channel, and we'd love to have a dialogue and hear your feedback down in the comments below or on our social media pages. So with all that said, thank you all so much for stopping by, and I hope you all continue to have an absolutely amazing day reading, and happy hunting, true believers.